In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Anubis is the name of a stand encountered by the Joestar group during the second half of the story. The stand is quite unique because it's not tied to a single individual. Rather, it's a sword that can possess whoever it wields, turning them into a master sword fighter. It proves to be one of the most dangerous stands in the series, but undeniably one of the most memorable as well. The question of how to translate the stand into a fighting game is something I'm sure the developers behind Heritage for the Future were eager to answer, given their talent for designing some seriously creative characters. However, you might be shocked to learn that Anubis in JoJo is represented across 3 different character slots. These 3 Anubis characters share a universal mechanic and are also some of the most fascinating characters in the game, representing a similar gameplay style but also entirely different spectrums of viability. Let's look at Anubis in JoJo Heritage for the Future. Now, before Heritage for the Future's release, the first revision of the game was JoJo's Venture, which had only 11 playable characters. One of them was Chaka, the first person to become possessed by Anubis in the manga. Chaka is the first weapon stand I have the honor of talking about, and he's also one of the first ones I've discussed that is very strong, but not overtly top tier. I guess Dio and Nukak sort of fall into that category too, but their position in the upper echelon of the cast is definitely more solidified than Chaka, to the point that either one of them bleeds into the top 5 when considering the Kakyoin and Pet Shop bands. Despite the fact that he isn't broken or overwhelming, Chaka is a very, very solid high tier with a lot going for him and a unique playstyle to boot. As a weapon stand, Chaka is a rare breed. There are only 3 of them in the entire roster, and Chaka is the only one to not be a low tier character. In prior videos, I might have given the impression that weapon stands were just active stands of a slightly different flavor, and that's not entirely untrue, but there are a fair amount of differences to list that weren't really relevant when I was talking about the other characters, but are undeniably more pertinent now that Chaka is the star of the show. Both active and weapon stands undergo a fair amount of changes between switching on and off their stand. Many of the universal benefits are still intact, including immunity to chip damage and the inability to get knocked down. However, weapon stand characters also can double jump, and unique benefits like air dashes or remote mode are obviously out of the window. Honestly though, even just evaluating these systems is hard because in comparison to the many active stand characters, Old Joseph, Alessi, and Chaka are all very, very different. For Chaka, well, the benefits of being a weapon stand thankfully don't inhibit his viability, but it's clear to see that he does somewhat struggle with this built-in handicap. Chaka's standoff moveset is very, very limited. With access to no specials and a single super, Chaka is not much for combat while Anubis is sheath. This isn't entirely a bad thing though, as Chaka trades the potential damage he could have for his mobility. Standoff Chaka is fast. Scary fast. He's got an extremely fast jump and a hyper hop that's even quicker, and this allows him to get in very easily. His normals may not be much to talk about, but they're fast and give him a way to assault the opponent while he's jumping around the fucking screen. Pressing the S button makes the full depth of Chaka's offensive kit available. Fast normals, a Rekka special move, and some very, very strong supers make stand-on Chaka a serious threat. Chaka's literal sword normals are highly damaging, multi-hitting, and long-ranged. With the ability to chain them together, Chaka can unleash fast and deadly combos and enforce very, very scary pressure. His mobility may be slightly worse, but his jumps are still pretty damn fast and enhanced by how far-reaching his jumping pokes are. Chaka has 2 special moves, both of which are very interesting. 214X is a Rekka, starting with an initial slash. Chaka has the option to follow up twice by pressing either A, B, or C. The second hit doesn't change much based on what button is pressed, and by that point he can cancel it into different actions or finish the Rekka. The third hit of the Rekka changes a decent amount, unlike the second. A and B are a low and overhead respectively. The low is unbelievably negative on block, so if they block it, you're gonna get killed. The overhead is fine since it might catch people off guard, but it's so goddamn reactable that anyone paying attention won't bite at all, and people who do get hit by it will likely be able to block it easily once they know to look out for it. Thankfully, the C-Ender is strong enough to make up for these shortcomings. It's a launcher, it combos off the first 2 Rekka hits unlike the A and B finishers, and with certain setups, you can score a hard knockdown and begin to set up your Oki. The Rekka has its problems, and it's far from his most pivotal tool, but still suitably strong enough to keep its utility in mind as you play. The other special in Chaka's kit is the learning counter. So, fun fact, this one special move shared between all 3 Anubis characters was the sole inspiration for me making this video. When I began getting back into playing Heritage earlier this year, one of my friends who I played with began learning Chaka, so I played against Chaka quite a lot. And I was curious for long enough about this counter to begin researching the 3 Anubis characters. It's really not as complicated as the amount of interest I had in it would suggest, but it's still a cool and unique move to have. As a counter, it acts just like you'd expect. While in the stance, the counter will activate against any normal attack and knock the opponent away. Once the move has been countered, you'll be given the ability to counter the move while blocking it. You can counter any physical normal, and the counter can be comboed off of, which, for Chaka anyway, is quite strong. However, there are some limitations. Obviously, the counter is exclusive to stand-on mode, but the blocking counterattack also shares this quality of being only usable when Anubis is unsheathed. Also, like any counter, it can be punished if it whiffs and he can be thrown out of it. Landing it might seem difficult, especially with some of the quirks with how waking up in this game works, but it's worth mentioning that you can cancel this move from the second hit of his Rekka, letting you catch people who try to mash out of it. Chaka's counter is probably the best of the 3 characters that can do it, but with every character, it's important to recognize the high risk, high reward aspect of this move. It can turn the tide of games, but it can also get you killed. Use it wisely. Chaka's 2 supers are very strong. Dimensional Slash can only be used in stand-off, and Bloody Flower Slash is only accessible in stand-on, and both have suitably different uses. Dimensional Slash has incredibly slow startup, so it's out as far as combos go, especially due to how limited he is in stand-off. So it's not a very good combo ender. What it is a fucking excellent reversal. It's coated in invincibility frames and it travels incredibly far. Now, it's not to be overused, since it's incredibly unsafe on block, but against projectiles or an opponent carelessly throwing out buttons, this move will punish them hard. Bloody Flower Slash is a primo combo ender that gives Chaka access to a very damaging way to end his strings. Oh yeah, it also starts up lightning fucking fast, so it acts as an excellent whiff punish. Between these 2 supers, Chaka can be dangerous even when he's not in the opponent's face, but again, the fact they're so unsafe means you shouldn't throw caution to the wind when using them. Oh yeah, he also has a 3rd traditional super. Costs 2 bars, and if it connects, it allows him to counter every normal from the character he's facing until he takes a hit. It's bad, so don't use it. So now to talk about his tandems, right? Actually no. Weapon stand characters do not have tandems, but instead custom combos. The custom combo debuted back in 1996 with Street Fighter Alpha 2. In that game, you could input attacks in a sequence and chain them together for big damage. JoJo reuses the system as a way to give weapon stands an equivalent to tandem, but they're inferior for a number of reasons. Still, CCs with Chaka are essential to high damage in a few fringe situations, notably against opponents in stand-on. During a CC, Chaka can chain moves in a certain period of time, contrast to tandems where button sequences have to be inputted during the flash. Chaka's damage can be wildly inconsistent. You can just as easily find videos of long custom combo sequences barely doing 30% as you can videos showing the guy chunking off 50 to 60%. A lot of this has to do with his need for stand crashes to do big damage. If he catches an opponent who doesn't have their stand out, his damage just isn't that impressive, which is probably the biggest thing holding him back. Chaka is very easy to pick up and play, but to be played at his best requires a lot more effort. His wildly differing damage and mobility in stand-on and stand-off requires constant management of the 2 states, more than any other weapon or active stand character. In the limited situations he can get big damage requires a rather patient playstyle of baiting and punishing. Not that he can't be played aggressively, but regardless of your game plan, good neutral is a must. His attacks being unsafe on block means you have to know your spacing and use his mobility to your advantage. Still, for all his flaws and not being quite close to the top tiers, Chaka is undeniably a very cool and strong character. Plus, look at that winning smile. How can you resist not giving him a spin? The next 2 characters we'll be discussing were both added to the game in the Heritage for the Future update. Like any game based on a shonen property, Heritage has a lot of slots taken up by the same character. There's 2 Josephs, 2 Dios, 3 Kakyoins, 2 Whole Horses, and of course, 2 Polnareffs. Now adding a second Polnareff based on his fight with Jotaro after he was possessed by Anubis is admittedly a cool concept, but I would like to know the logic of this game's English localization team when they decided that Anubis dual-wielding Polnareff would be best translated to Black Polnareff. Sure? Well, anyway, B-Pulse addition is pretty sensible, so I'm not complaining, just confused. Polnareff is obviously a tough act to follow. The guy is just outside the reaches of being the best character in the game. Shooting Star in his amazing 2A gives him some of the best and most relentless offensive pressure in the game, and with the standout, he becomes a defensive wall of remarkably strong and frustrating anti-airs and pokes. How would Capcom decide to match this strong kit for the second Polnareff? The answer is not at all, because Black Polnareff is a passive stand character, which means his chances of being anything more than kinda decent are fucking shot. Still, he's got some interesting stuff up his non-existent sleeves. Black Polnareff is a rushdown character just like the original Polnareff, but with a way more linear playstyle. He has no stand-on mode, so the amazing defensive utility of the original Polnareff's incredible stand-on buttons is out of the window, and without Shooting Star, those full-screen 50/50s have also been thrown out of that same window. What he trades those incredible tools for after picking up the second sword doesn't exactly make up for the loss. I suppose one thing he shares in common with the original version is amazing normals. In particular, 5A and 2A both have one frame-up startup, giving him two incredibly fast lightning jabs that can allow him to confirm into combos. B-Pole has a set of specials that's just downright strange. He has a 2-hit Rekka with an overhead and a low similar to Chaka, a strange chariot spinning sword move that can launch and acts as a combo ender, and a command normal version of Polnareff's million splits move. All these specials are incredibly unsafe on block, so pretty much all their utility comes from being combo filler. It also leaves him with a fairly limited kit and a linear game plan that involves getting in and trying to land a hit. In that way, he's not too dissimilar to Chaka, but Chaka had way better mobility, which made him more flexible. Black Polnareff has mediocre mobility, and his limited range means he has to work incredibly hard to actually get in. At the very least though, his fast normals have good priority, so he does have some leg up at a mid-range. So, once he gets in, he gets to exploit his biggest strength easily, which is his combo damage. With a number of solid links and a practical infinite, B-Pole may struggle to get in and open up his opponent, but once he gets that critical hit, he can make it hurt. A lot. However, similar to but not as extreme as Dio, a lot of these combos are tied behind pretty difficult links. Even though B-Pole is pretty easy to get into and has plenty of easy links, the harder stuff will really test your execution, and unlike a lot of other characters, he doesn't have a lot going for him besides these combos. I suppose if you want high damage with this character, you could always use his super, 214AA. It does about 40% HP and it's smothered in invincibility frames. Just don't do it too predictably, because if the opponent blocks it, you will pay. Even this straightforward use of meter isn't really justified though. Black Pole's biggest issue is that his kit is just beyond thin. He's got incredibly straightforward pressure, his Oki is limited, and even his damage requires more work than you'd ever have to put in with a lot of mid-tiers. B-Pole lacks a lot of the things that make other rushdown characters so strong, and his kit is severely lacking in cohesion. It's hard to even find things to talk about with this guy because he's so fucking simple and mediocre. He has a few cool combos, some neat mix-ups, but as a whole, he's just not worth playing compared to any other rushdown character. Still, if you want a version of Polnareff with a bit more edge, I guess he's not too bad. Okay, let me preface this segment by saying that this character's mere presence in this game is completely and utterly random and hilarious, so if I can get through the rest of this section without bursting out in laughter, I'll be a better person for it. Khan. Fucking Khan. Do you remember who Khan is? I can't imagine most people who play this game fucking do. Khan is the barber that cuts Polnareff's hair and later tries to cut his throat during the Anubis arc. Apparently, some developer really liked this guy, because he was added as one of the 6 secret characters in Heritage for the Future. The funny part is, out of these 6, Khan is the only one to be made from scratch. Shadow Dio, Young Joseph, Poingo, Rubber Soul, and New Kakyoin, they're all slightly modified versions of already existing characters on the roster, whereas Khan is completely and utterly original. Now it's hard to find anything corroborating the claim that I'm about to make, as developer interviews for this game are hard to come by, but Khan is clearly and blatantly unfinished. The guy's moveset is almost as thin as Black Polnareff. He's got a variety of worthless moves, and he's one of the most simple characters with little depth in his moveset. All of this stands to make him a pretty bad character, arguably one of the worst in the game. Still, let's take a look at what this bloodthirsty barber has to offer, and spoiler alert, it's not much. As a passive stand character, you won't be seeing many cool moves, nor any neat setups. What you will be seeing are these two moves, 2A and Jump C. Oh sure, he has some other okay normals, but these are the pillars that make up his neutral and offense. Don't underestimate these moves just because of how memeable they are though. Con 2A is genuinely scary. It's fast and it has insane range, and it's also his primary combo move, and the low hitbox means that Con's game plan of using it every single time a thought enters his brain allows him to constantly low profile a bunch of other moves. Jump C complements it by being a very fast overhead that offers Con a deceptively tricky overhead low mix-up thanks to its high amount of active frames and Con's fast jump. Con, for how big of a boy he is a fast motherfucker. You might be shocked to see him snaking his way across the ground and covering distance faster than you'd expect, so don't underestimate his mobility. So Con only has 2 special moves, besides the standard Anubis counter, offering minimal utility. His DP is hardly a DP, with no invulnerability and wake-ups being as messed up as they are. Its competency as an anti-air is also questionable since it can be blocked in the air, but if you can intercept a jump-in attempt, it'll do a good amount of damage and carries good stand crash potential. The other is an honest-to-god cryptid, and I wasn't even sure if it actually existed, or if I was just fucking seeing things the first time when I played Con. I was just casually hopping around, doing jump Cs, brushing up on my condimentals, when suddenly the burly son of a bitch lets out an odd scream and lunges forward with a slash. I was left utterly perplexed until I found out later that this is a charge move. Why? Seriously, did anyone expect when picking this guy up that he would have literally the most inexplicable charge move ever for literally no reason? I know Polnareff and Iggy also have motion inputs in addition to their charge moves, but fuck, it's still so weird. It's really only a combo ender since it's very unsafe. The C version does hit low, but it has so much startup that you'll never catch anyone at all. Con's learning counter is easily the worst of the 3 characters that have it. His little taunt animation isn't invincible, so if the counter whiffs, which doesn't happen often, he can be punished. He can actually be punished on hit, so fighting against someone who knows the matchup makes this incredibly risky. But just like every learning counter, you can shut down certain characters with it if you counter the right moves. Just employ caution when using it. Oh yeah, his throw is also punishable on hit. Jesus Christ, his character is a mess. On the bright side, he has a decent super. 214AA, the strongest sword, does great damage and easily combos off of 2A. It utterly chops health off, especially when unscaled, so don't feel bad to use this as a punish. It'll make him suffer. Unfortunately, it's pretty unsafe. His other super has a similar issue of being very unsafe, but it doesn't have the same practicality in combos. I suppose the last thing to discuss is his S button. S buttons for passive stand characters are usually pretty mundane and not very useful. You'll occasionally get something cool like whole horse bullets or genuinely useful like Rubber Soul's insane pokes which are stolen from Kakyoin, but passive stand S moves usually don't offer much in utility. So what does Con's S button do? Oh god, well, I'm not coming out of this as a better person. Seriously, what is this? Is this real? Is this reality? This is not real. This can't be. The colloquially named Spinny Funny is actually slightly more useful than the hilarious animation might entail. Don't get me wrong, it's got problems, namely with being very punishable on block and even on hit depending on how it connects. But it's got some strange properties that make it pretty useful, namely the hitbox is fucking huge. Combined with the fast startup, it's a very solid anti-air. Just be careful because it has lots of recovery when Con lands, which is increased if you hold the button to increase the duration of the spinning. Really though, the best thing about this move is that it'll fucking send your opponent into a laughing fit if you use it. It's just... What?! Okay. We've discussed the big guy's kit, and you might feel inclined to ask how he's not above Kakyoin on the tier lists. The obvious answer is no one wants to ban him because he's so goddamned fun, but I guess that's a little boring. Getting real for a few seconds, because God knows I need to bring myself back to fucking reality, Con suffers from many of the same issues Black Polnareff did. His game plan is simple with not many options to pivot away from spam 2A and jump 5C, and then combo into super if you hit with 2A. He lacks tools and these tools lack utility. His mix-ups are simple, but no one paying attention will ever really get caught, and he doesn't have much beyond his high mobility and these 2 decent moves. He's just beyond simple and not very effective, but holy shit is he fun, and since he's so simple, you can just turn your brain off, tap some buttons, and have a good fucking time. I have to admit, the sheer random nature of his inclusion makes me curious about some aspects of his existence. He turns into a cow? So that's Anubis and Heritage for the Future. 3 very unique characters. They may not all be good, but they're all certainly very fun to play as and watch. This game is always fun to make videos on, so if you'd like to see more, make sure to leave a like as it really helps the channel out, and if you'd like to see me cover characters from other games, feel free to leave a comment. Also, if you'd like to keep up with my content, then make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching, have a good night, and take care.